Chapter 13. Don't cross a bridge until you come to it. In the 1700s and 1800s, the prevailing mode of transport in North America and Europe was either on foot or on horseback. Those taking long journeys had at one point or another to cross over a bridge or two before they could reach their desired destination. Some of the bridges at that time, especially those not in the vicinity of a town or settlement, were not very stable and sometimes outright risky. Crossing a bridge was in many cases therefore considered a problem that had to be carefully dealt with if one was to reach his or her destination safely. This proverb originates around this same period of time, but the first known recording of it was by American poet and educator Henry Wordsworth Longfellow in 1851 in his poem The Golden Legend. "Don't cross a bridge till you come to it" is a proverb old and excellent wit. This proverb basically means that you should not anticipate or focus on problems that might occur in the future because this distracts you from focusing on other agent issues. And if you are sure there is a problem coming your way, you should deal with it at the right time. Our brain's negativity bias. When our forefathers went hunting for food thousands of years ago, the chances of them being attacked and mauled by dangerous predators like the saber-toothed tiger was very high. There was also the second dangerous probability of being attacked by fellow human beings from another tribe who, in the process of robbing them of their prey, might end up harming or even killing them. They therefore had to be on the lookout for danger, and they passed this behavior on to their children and grandchildren. The child mortality rate during that period was also very high, and even adults died of all kinds of diseases. Being so occupied with survival, they focused on the negative things that could endanger their ability to survive. Focusing on danger basically meant the difference between life and death. This focus is called the negativity bias. Fast forward to our present time. Although we are not confronted by many of the problems that our forefathers were faced with, the primitive instinct of looking out for the negative is still with us. There are countless cases of people forgetting an otherwise wonderful day when a colleague says something negative about them. Some have a day ruined while driving on the highway because a car ahead of them switches lanes suddenly without signaling. Others perhaps think that a partner no longer cares because they did not notice a new haircut or outfit. Negativity bias in the human brain is so powerful that we are motivated to veer more towards avoiding pain than towards gaining pleasure. A child with parents who are emotionally aloof and physically and verbally abusive is impacted more than a child with good parents. This is because of how sensitive the brain is to negative occurrences. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for regulating emotion and motivation, uses a majority of its neurons, about 2/3, to scan and detect bad news. It is unbelievable, but most people even make career and financial decisions based on avoiding something bad rather than achieving something positive. And it's no wonder that in the media, bad news catches people's attention more than good news does. Is negativity bias all bad? The clear answer to that is no. As with our ancestors thousands of years ago, negative feedback is important for us today, not only for survival, but also for improvement or adjustment. If a loved one or someone we trust alters us to the fact that we are following the wrong path, and we put our egos aside, this information helps us to correct and follow the right path. We should be aware of the negativity bias in our brain, but not allow it to stop us from taking positive action. Because negativity bias is a part of our DNA, as humans, we cannot get rid of it and must deal with it in several possible ways. Conscious action. Every time you notice that it is kicking in, consciously decide to act against it, not by condemning yourself for the negative thoughts, but by not acting on them. Gratitude. I have personally experienced the power of gratitude in my life. Every night before I go to bed, I take time to list at least 3 things that I'm grateful for, no matter how the day was. You will always find something to be grateful for. This leads your mind to focus on the positive things in life. Read positive literature, watch positive media. One of the major reasons why most people go through life with negative mental attitudes is the kind of media they consume. Mainstream media is filled with bad news because that is what sells. Reduce the consumption of such media and instead read or watch something that builds you up emotionally or spiritually. Choice of friends. We tend to emulate and think like those who are closest to us. Your friends will influence your life perspective, whether you like it or not. Surround yourself with positive people. Giving in to the negativity bias leads to fear, which then paralyzes us, and we focus on avoiding mistakes rather than making progress. Let us look at fear more closely. The 2 inborn fears. Of the many fears that humans have in their lives, there are only 2 fears we are born with. The fear of falling, which would mean injury or even loss of life, and the fear of noise. This alerted our ancestors on dangerous wild animals or fellow humans in pain, etc. These are the only 2 fears that are inborn. All other fears are learned through influence or conditioning. Studies have shown that some people avoid accumulating wealth or being successful, at least subconsciously, because they fear being robbed or losing their friends out of jealousy. Their reasoning is that the news seems to be full of rich people being robbed and in the process sometimes even getting killed. There are also common phrases like stinking rich, money is the root of all evil, a Bible verse that is actually not quoted correctly, and money changes people's character, etc. When you grow up hearing these kinds of phrases repeatedly and your subconscious mind accepts them as true, your perception of accumulating wealth is affected accordingly. You would rather maintain the status quo because your focus is on the fear of crossing that bridge rather than on current issues that would determine the quality of your life. If you look at it objectively, you will realize that there are a lot of people who became successful and rich in an honest way and are using their money to do a lot of good, like offering scholarships to children from disadvantaged families, building hospitals and infrastructure, and so on. Focusing on the here and now and dealing with problems at the right time is the healthiest approach. Does this mean one should ignore thinking of issues that may arise? No. Being aware of problems that may arise is one thing. Focusing on them to the point of failing to act on current issues is another thing altogether. This is negativity bias at its best. The difference between those who make progress and those who don't is that those who make progress act in spite of fear. The truth is most of the things we worry about in life never even come to pass. Mark Twain, one of America's most prolific writers, once put it this way: "I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened." Fear and worry about what is to come is very human, but it should motivate you to act rather than paralyze you to inaction. Life coach and motivational speaker Jim Rohn once said, "I'll tell you what changed my whole life. I finally discovered that it's all risky. The minute you get born, it got risky. If you think trying is risky, wait until they hand you the bill for not trying." Circle of concern versus the circle of influence. This is a concept that was once coined by the late Stephen R. Covey. If you think of or were to draw 2 circles, name one of them the circle of concern and the other circle of influence. The circle of concern consists of things that you have no control of, like the weather, the world economy, and other people's actions and opinions. The circle of influence, on the other hand, consists of things that you have control over, like your choices and your actions. One thing both of these circles have in common is that the more we focus on them, the more they grow. Effective and successful people in all areas of life spend most, if not all of their time in the circle of influence. They focus solely on things that they can influence, and the more they do that, the more this circle grows. If you work for a company whose boss is known to be arrogant and controlling, it will not serve you much to spend time thinking and talking about him or her. That would be a waste of time and energy, because you have no control over their actions. What you have control over is your job. Do it as best you can. You may be a student studying electrical engineering, for example, and then you find out that the chances of finding a job in this field are slim. Your focus should be on studying hard to get good grades, and then focusing on the job issue when you are done, rather than getting so discouraged because of focusing on the future. You have control over the studies, but you have no control over the situation in the job market. Focus on your circle of influence, which is getting good grades, and then cross the bridge of finding a job when you get there. Focusing on the present circle of influence increases your chances of achieving good grades. A divided focus may lead to the opposite result. I know from my own experience that there is always a way of crossing that dreaded bridge. The news and what other people say are in essence simply other people's opinions or observations. I remember when I wanted to apply for film school in Germany. Many people told me to forget about it because thousands of people apply every year, but only about 15 are admitted. Those telling me that were not lying and actually had good intentions of sparing me the disappointment of rejection. I acted in spite of the fear and was admitted. Could I have also been rejected? Sure, but even then, life offers more than one possibility to cross the bridge. When a plant has established its roots and begins to grow, if you were to place a rock on that very place it is beginning to sprout, it won't stop growing. Rather, it will first grow horizontally until it reaches the edge of the rock, and then grow vertically. There is always a way to overcome obstacles, and even in cases where we feel we can't change a situation, we can learn to live with it. Split focus means less productivity and less quality. One of the major reasons why we need to focus on what we can do now, rather than on problems that may arise in the future, is the divided attention. The human brain can only truly focus on one thing at a time. If one's attention is split, one may end up doing a little bit of different things, but none of those things will be done well. This, of course, means focusing on the most important things. By this I mean the things that are most important to you, not to your friends or family, but to you. I emphasize this point because it is also possible to be busy without being productive. If you are busy acting on distractions like unnecessary consumption of social media or dealing with other people's issues that have nothing to do with you, you cannot be productive. Focus on those things that get you closer to your set goals step by step. When you eventually get to the bridge, deal with it the same way with intense focus. Concentrating on current issues and then dealing with the problems in the horizon when the time comes is far more effective and productive in terms of quality and time. There is indeed great wisdom in this proverb.